This is for you, Star Wars.
I loved Star Wars Episode 9. Oh man, I couldn't even hold it in. First of all, thank you so much to Disney for completely invalidating the entire Star Wars saga, and for completely destroying any artistic integrity and continuity that this sequel trilogy, if you can even call it that, had. Yes, as you can tell by the title and the tone of this video, I did not enjoy my experience watching Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. Now, beyond that just being an incredibly stupid title, there are just so many things at work here, and we're going to talk about all of it. We will. I have a lot of strong opinions about Star Wars and Disney, and their treatment of this franchise is the main reason I truly have a problem with Disney as of late. Before we get into things, though, there are a couple things I should probably go over. I'm about as casual as a Star Wars fan can get. I grew up on the original trilogy. Those movies are still amazing. I go back to them every now and then. And I do truly believe that those movies stand as a testament to the accomplishments in what Hollywood can achieve and, what George Lucas and Lucasfilm achieved. Those movies are great and they will stand the test of time. However, this sequel trilogy has completely invalidated their entire legacy as far as the story goes. And it also completely invalidates The Last Jedi, which, my second point, I actually like The Last Jedi. I understand why a lot of fans didn't like it. I truly do. However, as a casual Star Wars fan, I didn't have a problem with the liberty that they took with the story, with the changes that they made to the characters, and everything else. I genuinely enjoyed the film because it did not feel like a Star Wars film. J.J. Abrams, he's a great director, but he is not a good storyteller. And just look at the Cloverfield films, or Super 8, to understand that his best movies come when he is actively aping or just directly ripping off another film. Now, my main problems with this film come from its aggressive, and I mean aggressive, retconning of The Last Jedi. This film is the biggest, sharp U-turn that I have ever seen within this major studio franchise. I have never seen a sequel just drastically change and then completely try to invalidate the film that came before it. Disney, J.J. Abrams, Kathleen Kennedy, I don't know who approved this, but the idea to bring Palpatine back was a mistake. It truly was. Palpatine, his return into this franchise, into this movie, it symbolizes all the problems that I have with the film. Now, Ian McDiarmid himself, he does a great job. I thought that he brought a darkness to the film that hadn't been seen in the Star Wars franchise really since Revenge of the Sith. Revenge of the Sith is probably my favorite Star Wars film. Now, I know a lot of people have problems with the prequels. I don't share those same sentiments. I mean, yeah, there's some narrative flaws here and there, and some of the effects haven't aged really well, and Jar Jar Binks is admittedly a problematic character, but those were the Star Wars movies that came out when I was a kid, so I grew up on those just slightly more than I grew up on the original trilogy. And Revenge of the Sith was the very first film that I saw in the series. Speaking of which, this film, Rise of Skywalker, completely rips off not only Revenge of the Sith, but Return of the Jedi too, which we should have all seen that coming, given how The Force Awakens just completely ripped off A New Hope. And that's the thing about The Last Jedi, yeah. It took a couple things here and there, but The Last Jedi had the balls to take risks. It had the balls to completely do away with the franchise mythology and try to do something new with it. And instead, J.J. Abrams decided to do the complete opposite here. And bringing Palpatine back, from the very opening crawl, it irritated me. That is how Palpatine comes back. We learn it through text. We learn it through text. Come on! There was absolutely no sophistication, no subtlety, no lead up to this at all. And it just completely ruined it started the film on a really horrible note, and it just went down from there. Now, there were some great things about the movie, and I will talk about them at length here in a little bit, but bringing it back to Palpatine, the way he is used, as like an exposition bot. And the fact, almost every single character in this film is like an exposition bot. We don't get to see a lot of this stuff happening. We just get told that it happens. Going back to the opening crawl for a minute, they mentioned specifically in the opening crawl that Palpatine sent out like a voice message or a signal or transmission to the rest of the galaxy that says that he's returned. We don't get to see that. We don't get to see a bit of that. That sounds like a cool scene, if you ask me. I wanted to see that. I want to see all of the characters' reaction to Palpatine being back. No, we don't get that at all. All we get is Kylo Ren approaching this planet we've never heard of, which admittedly is pretty spooky and scary. That's one of my pluses that I'll get into here in a little bit. But no, Palpatine is back. We don't have there's no explanation. They don't even bother trying to explain how he survived at all. I mean, we're meant to assume that he was cloned somehow, but I don't buy that at all, if you ask me. They also completely explain away Snoke in like a one line, just, oh, he was a clone, I made him, or whatever, boom, that's all you get about him. I don't understand how that is more interesting than the directions that they were going with in The Last Jedi. I don't know. This movie angered me. It truly angered me because of all the backpedaling and all the retconning. And Rey's parents, Rey's apparently Palpatine now. They didn't set that up at all. You will never convince me that J.J. Abrams had this planned out from the beginning, because it is handled so sloppily and so haphazardly here in this film, if you can even call it that. And speaking of which, Rise of Skywalker, what a dumbass title that is. Disney, you don't own everything, okay? You didn't create Star Wars. You don't have any claim to Star Wars other than the 4.3 whatever billion dollars that you paid George Lucas. And you know what? We're going to halt this conversation for a second. I'm going to address the fans, the fanboys, the ones that triggered this whole mess. I hope you're happy. I really, truly do. I hope you're happy that not only you tore down a man that created one of the greatest sci-fi franchises of all time, but you also completely destroyed another filmmaker's attempts to do something bold and original with the series. Instead, y'all want to have this Remember Berries, Palpatine, Star Wars battle, laser swords, everything, lightsaber. It's just so boring and so basic that it can just completely destroys any integrity that this franchise even had. It's all about remember this, remember that, remember this, remember that, and I'm sick of that. I am so sick of that in Hollywood. This isn't a Disney problem. This is a Hollywood problem. I had the same issues with the Terminator Dark Fate, what another dumbass title that was. I'm really starting to lose my shit here. Why don't we talk about some positive stuff here real quick so I can calm down a little bit. Honestly, I did enjoy most of the Palpatine scenes, even though they felt completely out of place and they didn't make sense. All of his scenes take place in the Sith homeworld. There's a lot of Sith mythology and lore being built here in this film. I really do enjoy that. A lot of callbacks to the prequels. The atmosphere is really frightening. This is as close to a horror tone that I feel the Star Wars franchise has gotten to. Speaking of which, I would love to see a horror version of Star Wars. Disney, get on top of that. I know you're doing it with the MCU now with the Doctor Strange sequel, which I will go see because I did like Doctor Strange. I also enjoyed Chewbacca. They did a lot with him, actually. I was surprised. He had several really heartfelt scenes when he learns that Princess Leia has died, for example. Spoiler alert, I don't really care. He just lets loose and wails, and I was like, my heart, it hurt. I didn't even understand what he was saying, but I knew that he was in pain. That was some good right there. That was really good. There were a couple other moments that I remember crying and getting emotional at, but to be honest, I can't remember them. Also, the acting was pretty good. I will give them that. Daisy Ridley, say what you want about the character of Rey. She truly embodies that character. I feel her passion, her spirit. She's great. I love her, and she was great in Murder on the Orient Express. I'm so glad that this franchise has given a boon to her career. Hopefully, she can rise above this now and move on. She needs to leave Star Wars and Disney in the past. Like I said before, I'm a casual Star Wars fan. I don't have any real investment in where this franchise goes now, especially now that it's owned by Disney. It just seems to me that Disney didn't learn the lessons of of Warner Brothers and Justice League that heavily interfering and aggressively retconning the previous films in your franchise is not the way to build franchise support and fan support. Yeah, you cater towards the fans, the vocal minority of fans that hated The Last Jedi, but you completely alienated critics and everybody else. And I just want to ask you something. Was it worth it? Was it worth it? And that's not a rhetorical question. I genuinely want to know. I thought the industry had learned from the pitfalls of Justice League. And speaking of which, this movie's being compared to Avengers Endgame. This is the Avengers Endgame of Star Wars franchise. Hell no. This is nowhere near remotely Avengers Endgame. I didn't even see Endgame. And I know for a fact that movie's probably way better than this film, has at least some integrity, has at least the balls to follow through on the ends of its story. No, this movie has no integrity, no balls. This is not the Endgame of the Star Wars franchise. This is the Justice League of the Star Wars franchise. And that is not a good thing at all. The mistakes of this film and the reaction to The Last Jedi, this is going to haunt this franchise for a long time. And Disney is actually being really smart and trying to dial back a little bit and wait for the waters to clear before they pursue forward. But honestly, they don't deserve a second chance. They had their first chance. They ruined it for me, honestly, with The Force Awakens. The Last Jedi was a very pleasant surprise, as was Rogue One. Both those movies rank very high on my Star Wars rankings. And you may not care about my opinion because I'm not a Star Wars fan. I'm just a fan of film and cinema. And I just hate to see classic, iconic franchises like this being treated with so little respect and so little care. It's like Disney doesn't care what they print out or what they put out on film as long as they think it'll make the most amount of money in China or wherever it is they're trying to sell this shit. And you know what? These movies don't do well in China anymore. So you can stop, okay? You can stop. Put the brakes on a little bit. Write a solid outline, have these trilogies planned out in advance, and you know what? Stick to your guns. Don't do that lame bullcrap that you just did now when you give the reins to the franchise to a competent filmmaker. He does what he wants with it, and then you don't like that, so you just go and retcon everything in the next sequel. No, it don't work like that, and it'll be a long-ass time before I see another Star Wars film in the theaters. That's all I have to say. This movie made me mad. I'm gonna go smoke a joint and try to calm down.